It is one of the most famous photos of the 20th century, considered a defining portrait of Winston Churchill, and a masterwork by Canadian photographer Yousuf Karsh. Right now, the original of this photo, you see it there, was taken off a wall at Ottawa Château Laurier and swapped for a fake in what appears to be an art heist. But when and how remains a mystery. The apparent theft only came to light last Friday when a hotel staffer noticed the frame was wrong. It simply didn't match the frames of the other Karsh works on display. Staffers thought something was up, and that is where my next guest comes into the story. Jerry Fielder is the director of Yousuf Karsh's estate, and he joins us from Boston. Thank you for your time, sir, on this. I find this story simply fascinating. What were your first thoughts when you heard about the portrait being stolen?
I was stunned. I couldn't believe that it had happened. And it's been there for 25 years and enjoyed by everyone in the hotel in Ottawa. And it was an incredible shock.
I have seen that photo, and it is amazing. Have you seen or heard of a robbery like this before?
No, I haven't. Never. I was just astounded.
So just tell me how a staffer might have noticed the difference. You know that photograph well, and it was supposedly the frame, because the frames of the other Karsh photos are very similar. So this one, I guess, would have stood out?
I assume. I'm in Boston, where I live. I haven't seen the photo that was on the wall, and I can't talk very much about it because this means a great deal to me and to the Karsh estate and to Mrs. Karsh, and we want to see whoever did this be apprehended and recover the original. So I'm really not allowed to talk much about the details of what happened.
Let's talk about the details of the portrait. One of the things is, you have that look on Winston Churchill's face. And we also have Mr. Karsh explaining how he got that look. Let's just listen to that first.
Yes.
I asked him to remove it. He would not hear of it. So without further attempt on my part or thought, it was totally spontaneous. I said, "Forgive me, sir." By the time I walked back to my camera, the 4 feet, he looked so belligerent he could have devoured me. And then he delivered himself with one of the most eloquent remarks. He said, "You can even make a roaring lion stand still to be photographed."
Wow, just hearing the explanation, and what he removed from his hand is what?
He took the cigar from Churchill's lips, and as he said in the clip, he walked back to his camera, and Churchill gave him that glowering look, and he caught the moment, and it became one of the most famous photographs in history.
Wow. So, what is the value of this photo?
Well, the value is of course the historic portion of it. The monetary value I really can't address, and that's very hard to say. But the history of the photograph at the Château Laurier, Mr. Karsh, he had his very first exhibition there in 1936, and in the drawing room. And later he moved his studio to the 6th floor of the Château Laurier, and he and Mrs. Karsh lived on the 3rd floor. And the CBC Radio was on the 7th floor, right above us. And so their association was very long and very warm at the hotel. And when they left the hotel in 1998, he presented a small collection of photographs to be in the hotel as a thank you for all their hospitality over his many decades with them.
It's just a fascinating story. When people notice there's a difference, there would be a difference in the signature too, correct?
Yes, and I can tell you that when I was contacted by the general manager of the hotel over the weekend, and they suspected that something was wrong, and I asked them to send me a photograph of the signature, and I could tell that it had been forged.
You could tell that it had been forged. Like, how different would the fake be from the original?
I think most people, if they're looking at a photograph, they're looking at the photograph and not the signature, and wouldn't notice. But after 43 years of working with his photographs and him, I know his signature very well, and it was an obvious copy.
Just talk about the importance of Yousuf Karsh's work overall.
Well, he was one of the greatest photographers of the 20th century, and he took this photograph in 1941. That was followed by a trip to England in 1943, when he was invited to photograph Princess Elizabeth and King George VI and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, George Bernard Shaw, and many other notable people. And I think the 1941 photograph of Churchill opened a great many doors for him, and his career continued after that for another 50 years. And he photographed 15,312 people. And if you go through the history of the 20th century, he made an artistic and historic document of most of them.
And this photograph of Churchill was taken after his 1941 speech to the Canadian Parliament during the Second World War, right? That's
right. That's the very famous speech when he talked about Hitler was going to wring the neck of England like a chicken, and he said, some chicken, some neck, and everyone pounded the table, and it was a very emotional speech. And then he went into the Speaker's office, or the Speaker's chamber, and was handed a brandy and a cigar, and he was ready to relax and didn't particularly want to be photographed. And but Yousuf was persistent and captured something quite remarkable.
So that photograph was actually taken on Parliament Hill, is that correct?
Yes, Churchill went straight from Parliament into the chambers of the Speaker, and that's where it was taken. And today, if you go into the chambers of the Speaker, there is a very large photograph that Yousuf made especially for the Speaker's chamber of Churchill in the exact spot where he was photographed.
This is like, we're talking about how historical this is. And one of the questions I had when I was talking about this story, and I don't know if you can answer this because you don't talk about the monetary value of it, but where would someone want to get, take the original? Maybe, I don't know, I'm just thinking, would it have value here in Canada? Would it have value in England?
Oh, it would have value all over the world. Mm-hmm. That photograph is in collections of most of the major museums throughout the world. And it's not something that you could take to a garage sale and sell. I don't know who did this or why they did this, or if they wanted this on their wall, or if they planned on trying to sell it. That's all to be answered at some point down the road. But I really don't know.
It just boggles the mind. When I saw this story, just seriously boggles the mind. And how they would get a print that would, in fact, fool the staff for how many ever days it was.
Yes, there are so many questions to be answered. And I more than anyone, want to find the answers.
Okay, well, thank you for your time today. Truly an interesting and fascinating story. Jerry Fielder, thank you for your time.
And Hannah, may I add something?
Absolutely.
If anyone has any information about this, please contact the authorities.
Yes, absolutely. We do know that Ottawa police are looking into this. And if anyone does have information, yes, as you mentioned. Thank you kindly, sir.
Thank you, Hannah.